Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're meeting on today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Our industry works with Indigenous communities all over the world, and I would like to thank all of our partners and traditional owners for making what we do possible. Today I've been asked to share my thoughts on how mining can be more sustainable, a topic that can involve several days of conference to cover fully. However, it's not lost on anyone. This is the last keynote address of the conference, and before everyone needs to grab that plane or that drink to celebrate the end of two very busy and insightful days. So let's get started. Much of what I've got to say has been covered in earlier sessions, so I hope it's a useful summary. How can we make mining more sustainable? Well, how indeed? This is an issue that Rio Tinto considers and grapples with nearly every day. How can we do more? How can we do better? And how in doing so can we leave a lasting, positive legacy for the people of the communities here in Australia, in Canada and elsewhere in the world? I suppose it's worth starting at the very beginning and saying that we know that as human beings in this shared environment, our future is bound together. Without clean air, clean drinkable water, without shelter and a safe home to return to every day, without these, nothing else is possible. This may seem so obvious to many of us here in the room, but in mining, we are privileged to work in areas where these things are not always taken for granted. Today, our world is well into the fourth industrial revolution, blurring the lines between the physical, digital and biological spheres, and this revolution is disrupting every industry in every country. And the breadth and depth of these changes signals the transformation of entire systems of production, management and governance. And as an industry, I suggest to you that this vortex of change, our response as an industry cannot be more of the same. We have to operate differently, yes, but we also have to think differently and behave differently. Easy to say, much harder to do. Let's start with something very much in the news: climate change. As a business and investment level, Rio Tinto has long recognised climate change as both a threat and an opportunity. We recently outlined the history of our focus on this topic and our forward thoughts and plans in our first climate change report, following the recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, or TCFD as it is better known. Our report's a great report, and I'd encourage everyone here to read it. It's available on our website. But if you're looking for the short version, here's what it says. We want to be part of the solution, and we're aiming to do that or be that in 4 ways. Firstly, we'll supply the materials essential for the transformation to a low-carbon economy. If we think about transport, something we do every day, copper is critical for electrical vehicles. Aluminium is needed for light-weighting vehicles, which can make them more fuel efficient. Second, we'll manage our own carbon footprint. Third, we'll identify and assess physical risk exposures. And fourth, we will partner and advocate for policies that advance climate goals. We are committed to reducing the energy intensity of our operations and the carbon intensity, including the development and implementation of innovative technologies. And we strongly believe the best outcomes must be achieved through collective action by governments, by business, and by consumers, working together to address climate change. We also appreciate that reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions cannot come at the cost of secure, affordable, and reliable energy. At Rio Tinto, we know we've got more to do, but we've made some good progress. We've had energy intensity targets in place since 2008, with a focus on abatement. We've reduced our absolute greenhouse gas emissions by 43% since 2008. It's true that the sale and closure of assets, including the last of our coal assets, contributed to these reductions, but so too did our clean, renewable energy. Today, 71% of the electricity used across Rio Tinto businesses worldwide is from low-carbon renewable energy, mostly hydro, but also wind and solar. We've committed to substantial long-term decarbonisation by 2050, and work is underway to define new emissions reduction targets to take effect when our current targets expire in 2020. We're also constantly assessing low-emission technology opportunities and building our own capability to innovate. To make aluminium more sustainable, Rio Tinto embraced and pioneered the concept of multi-stakeholder engagement along the value chain. Working with the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, other producers, users and stakeholders, the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative was launched in 2012 with a commitment to maximise the contribution of aluminium to a sustainable society. The ASI's chain of custody standard allows end users to be sure that the aluminium they buy has been manufactured to ASI certified producers at each stage of the process. I'm pleased to say that in 2018, Rio Tinto became the first company to be certified under ASI. Also in 2018, we announced a partnership with Alcoa, supported by Apple and the Canadian and the Quebec governments, to bring direct emissions-free smelting technology to market. Elysis is the name we have given it. We've also partnered with Nespresso, an end user of aluminium. This included signing a memorandum of understanding to work with Nespresso's capsule manufacturers to fulfil a commitment of sourcing 100% sustainable aluminium by 2020, so people can enjoy their coffee knowing it is packaged in responsibly produced material. We're the only company currently able to sell aluminium that customers can be assured has been produced to the highest environmental, social and governance standards. The ASI chain of custody stretches all the way from our Gove bauxite mine in the Northern Territory to our alumina refinery, aluminium smelters and cast houses in Quebec, Canada. This month, we announced that our recently opened $2.6 billion Amrun bauxite mine in Cape York in Queensland has begun the process for ASI certification. But sustainability isn't just about the environment and climate change. It is also about partnering with local communities and ensuring we all share in the benefits of mining. At Amrun, as with our operations in the Pilbara in Western Australia, we sought to partner with our local communities to build commercial capacity to bid for and participate in the construction and ultimate operation of the mine. Over 17 new businesses were created in Cape York in meeting this goal. At Rio Tinto, we're rightly proud of our direct engagement of Indigenous employees, representing 8% of our Australian workforce. We know that our communities also value the multiplier effect of engaging Indigenous and other local businesses in our supply chain for contracting and purchasing goods and services. One of my favourite stories is from my hometown in Western Australia, where we helped Kulbadi, a Noongar-owned stationery business, from supplying 2 floors of our Perth office through now to what has become a successful business supplying all of ours and other companies' needs in Western Australia. Something we can all be proud of. In fact, we've spent over $3.5 billion with Australian Indigenous businesses and their joint ventures over the past 7 years. In 2017, we contracted work from more than 70 different Indigenous businesses and provided business development, capability and capacity building for more than 125. This has been a story of growth. In the Pilbara, for instance, we used to work with just 6 Pilbara Indigenous businesses in 2010. Today, we work with 138 Pilbara Indigenous businesses. When we say our business has a lasting positive impact, this is what we mean. Another exciting first is our facilitation of the Gulkula bauxite mine, near our Gove mine in the Northern Territory, which is fully owned and operated by the traditional owner group of Gulmach. They have a supply agreement with us for supplying the sale of the ore, and their first shipment was made in May of last year, direct to China. The Gulkula mine was enabled by funding from both Rio Tinto, the Northern Territory Government and Gulmach Corporation for a mine training centre to skill up their employees, as well as Rio Tinto providing advice and support for mine construction and operation. A number of the sessions and panels over the past 2 days have addressed the challenge of skills development, and it's no different for Rio Tinto. In following what has been a successful playbook, we identified someone to partner with to address this area of concern, and then invited others to join us to make it a cross-industry solution. As mentioned by Minister Bill Johnson this morning, we partnered with the West Australian Government to lead the establishment of a WA vet collaboration. People can only develop the skills of the future if government, industries, schools, TAFE and universities work together to ensure we are equipping current and future employees with the STEM skills the jobs of the future require. Our vet collaboration partners now include BHP, Roy Hill, FMG, Woodside, Quadrant, Komatsu, Caterpillar, South 32, Yara, as well as the government departments, the Chamber of Minerals and Energy, and the University of Western Australia. It's a core enabler for our future workforce, providing new ways of learning, helping to build pathways essential to upskill and prepare our current workforce, and provide public programs for those who wish to join our business in the future. The changing skills required in the mining industry also provide us with an opportunity to address diversity and inclusion. Women, as we know, don't typically see the resources industry as their first employment choice. I did, of course, but as a West Australian, how could I not? But unfortunately, not enough women do so, influenced by peers, family, society perceptions, job location, opportunities, as well as education choices. All things we know the industry is trying to address. Our operations centre in Perth means that a lot of roles that are no longer based in remote locations. People can work more regular hours, dual careers are easier to achieve, and issues such as childcare are better covered in a capital city setting than a remote or country location. To achieve greater diversity, we need to encourage more women to study STEM, and our vet collaboration will be critical to this transition. If we take a long-term view, as we must, ultimately resources run out and economic equations change, and our mines and any associated processing plants, refineries and smelters eventually close. As we plan for eventual closure and handover of our assets, we are working to find innovative ways to make good use of the land and facilities to ensure a sustainable future for nearby communities. We must demonstrate effective mine closure and completion processes before we start developing new projects, and combine our industry expertise with community and government engagement to achieve sustainable outcomes. Taking a more integrated approach to mine closure planning and doing it as early as possible in the life of the mine is likely to lead to more effective mine closure and completion processes. At Rio Tinto, planning for the future of our sites is a core business function, and so it should be. At the end of 2018, we had almost $10 billion set aside on our balance sheet for the cost of closing our current and legacy sites. We seek to have continuous rehabilitation and also look at how best to undertake decommissioning, remediation, and any long-term obligations, such as water treatment. Our research partnerships are critical to these objectives. We also continually assess the potential to repurpose and reuse sites for future economic or social benefit. This work is highly collaborative. In 2017, for instance, our legacy gold mine in Indonesia, Kalian, was assessed by the government and the World Wildlife Fund as an ideal location for the highly endangered Sumatran rhino. Part of the site has now been designated a protection forest and were used as a sanctuary for housing and breeding rhino with the aim of eventually releasing them into the wild. Again, something we can all be proud of, and we are. When closing an operation, understanding the social and economic impacts on the local community are just as important as the land rehabilitation. In Gove, when Rio Tinto announced the curtailment of its aluminium refinery, we were acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead for the region. So we worked with the government to inject $2 million in seed funding to local businesses. While the Gove bauxite mine continues to play an important role in the region, employing more than 300 people and contributing $300 million to the Northern Territory economy, the region has much more to offer, and optimism is now flowing back into the community. The program was recognised in 2016 as the best rural and remote area initiative at Australia's National Economic Development Excellence Awards, and the model is also being considered by other communities across Australia and internationally. At Rio Tinto, our purpose is to produce the materials essential to human progress. Implicit in that promise is the idea that the way we work should also contribute to human progress. And so, on issues ranging from climate change to education to community development, we try to do exactly that, so that the future of our industry can be even brighter and more sustainable than our illustrious past. Thank you.